Yep. Just do a timeout.
Yes.
Minutes win it? No.
Red flag
Not
it.
Bill. Not Bill. Still not Bill.
No, I
No?
bought
Maybe I'll email you
I bought Ed Kleitch's
on our break.
2014
Crafty generally
2.5
skips
years
the
ago. It had 30-some thousand miles on it.
Yeah.
Who's throwing at 6?
This one, how this one is too.
Did he forget it's at 5:30 tonight?
They had all the
Bill?
tech formats and everything. Oh yeah, it's awesome.
Nope,
I'll
not Bill.
be done.
Someone text him.
Is he?
That's kind of nice.
Kathy, write your name on our
On which one?
budget thing.
What's my name on it? Okay. All right. Done. How do I give it back? Okay.
Bill's parking right now. Mike, I almost called you. I was driving across town. I came to the Lehman's entrance.
Yeah.
Where did I get on the main drag, and I saw your car still parked at the
Yeah,
office. I'm like,
tell them guys that
I hope
pick
he
them up
remembers.
so they don't call in and get them.
Yes, I do right now.
I did. I even set little alarms to go off.
I don't
did
even know
too.
if they know because they haven't said anything.
Oh. Just let them know they're coming.
How's your trip to Florida?
It was good.
Yeah.
It was good. Yeah, it was a lot of mom. It's called Best of Best. Fred was only
Best
there
Fest.
until Monday, so it was just me with the kids. So
Hi, Bill.
I got a little much. So Saturday morning, I was like, peace out. I'm going to district wrestling by myself. Did I give him his no? It was relaxing though. Like we didn't do a ton, which is nice. Like it's just swim and on the days it wasn't frigid. But we only had like 3 really nice days. Start if you want to give him 2 upper 60s most days. Some low 70s. Some days were like one day it was like low 60s. It was cool and rainy.
I'd like to welcome everybody to our Monday, February 12th, 2024 Cascade City Council meeting. We'll have a call to order with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Oliphant?
Here.
Roush?
Here.
Hush? Here. Gale?
Here.
Delaney?
Here.
I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Gale,
I'll second.
second by Roush. All in favor?
Aye.
At this point, we'll have public comment. You have 3 minutes per person to speak on agenda items and local government issues. Seeing none. Number 6, we have a presentation from the Iowa EMS consultants on the EMS study.
So I'll start and then Robert and Scott can come up. I believe everybody on the council side of things, except for Chad, as that was before he was in office, have met with our consultants. You'll recall that we kind of talked about the fact that we have a struggle in all volunteerism to find people to work in different parts of the needs that we have, one of which being EMS. And so when Mike and I had talked prior to the DRA grant, that the DRA funding was being used for planning purposes, not equipment. We wrote the grant, so the cost for this study is about $19,000. 16 of it is being paid for by DRA. And so Scott and Robert have spent quite a bit of time here meeting with people that are all listed in the study. The purpose of tonight is for them to present in open session the recommendations that they have and things that they've seen and things that we can consider at budget time. Then there are a few of those items that will be personnel related. We've spoken to the 4 officers with the EMS service, and they all agreed to close session. So we'll have everybody excused, including the EMS staff, for a short time for the consultants to talk to the council, and then we'll have the officers come back and be able to talk to them a little bit. And then obviously, we're not going to resolve everything tonight. The intent is not to have decision-making. It's really for you just to hear from them, ask any questions that you have immediately, and then this will be, over the next few weeks of budget time to be able to talk about, obviously, some of their recommendations, our financial impacts, and things like that. So it's good timing. With regard to the DRA grant, we had to be done by April, so that was part of making sure that we have this presentation. So it's a little bit uncommon for the way that we're going to do it, but when they're done with the open part, people have to leave in the middle. We'll stop Boxcast. People can wait out in the hallway over by the gym, and then we'll turn Boxcast back on We'll have like a 2-minute break to bring people back in after the closed session, and then we'll turn Boxcast back on, and we'll call it Boxcast Part 2. So if anybody has any questions, otherwise, appreciate everybody being here, especially from the service. And then both Robert and Scott, you can come up to the podium, introduce yourselves, and talk about, and everybody has the packet, the studies in the packet.
Well, good evening. I'm Robert Hall from Iowa EMS Consultants.
Scott McDonough, Iowa EMS Consultant.
I believe all the council, the mayor, everybody has their copies of our findings. First off, I really appreciate everybody giving us their time for this. It was super easy to schedule our meetings, to kind of consolidate our time, only spend a few days in your town. Your Main Street is awesome, by the way. We kind of fell in love with that on all of our visits. The meat and potatoes of this is volunteerism is dying in not only Iowa, but the country. No one seems to have the time to volunteer anymore. It's just a fact. Volunteer EMS, volunteer firefighters, the Eagles Club, the Fraternal Order of Moose, they're all seeing Masons, they're all seeing less numbers. We live in a 2-income world. We live in, kids are in sports. There's a huge amount of outside factors. We came up with a couple solutions, and if you don't mind, I'll just go straight to our solutions, our recommendations, if you don't mind.
Yep.
You have an extremely dedicated EMS department as a whole. You have 8 or 9 individuals that do an outstanding job. The conversation I had with your medical director was unbelievable. For a medical director to make a quote to me saying they're one of the best departments that I oversee is something to be proud of, as not only an EMS provider, but as a city council and a governing body. Out of all 4 solutions that we came up with, the solution we recommend that you guys take is solution 2. You unfortunately don't have a hospital to make the transfers. And an EMS, loaded miles are money. And you guys don't have that in your city. You don't have that revenue source that a lot of communities have. However, your ambulance revenues, the money you collect, is pretty substantial for the size of department you are. Ambulance budget, your annual city budget is a decent budget for the size of ambulance department you have. We recommend solution 2, where you hire an EMS director 15 hours a week. You have, on top of it, all the solutions are paying your paramedics, EMTs, and drivers an hourly wage to drive, to attend. If they go to Dubuque to change out a drug box, you should compensate them for that. On top of mileage, they should be paid an hourly rate to do that. So all the solutions have the hourly rate for paramedics, EMTs, and drivers. We think you should hire an EMS director for 15 hours a week. The reason we came to that solution was you don't need a full-time EMS director in this size of department, but you do need someone that is dedicated for a certain amount of hours every day, that the mayor can call, that Lisa could call, that the fire chief could get in contact with. We think the weakest link in your whole thing, and it's no disrespect to Mike, because he's not paid to be an EMS director. He's your department head by vote of the city council. But we think your weakest link is that break of communication at the department head level. And again, it's no disrespect to Mike, because you do a great job. However, you need to have that person that is your contact person. And that's our solution for you, is to hire that EMS director at 15 hours a week. And it doesn't need to be a paramedic. It can be, it doesn't need to be. It's whatever you guys decide as a governing body is our solution for you. Now, that's not saying in 5 years, if ambulance calls go down, which they won't, that you reevaluate it, or 3 years, or however you see fit. It doesn't cost you, between your ambulance budget and your ambulance revenue, you still have money that you're generating. There's no economic hit to the city budget at the end of the year by doing that. That makes sense? There is a couple personnel issues that we'd like to talk to the council in, if that's possible.
Yep. Do you want to just maybe kind of go over I guess it's technically under solution 1, and then you just say it's repeated, but kind of the you're looking at 3 tiers, right? Because we have 3, everybody is either a driver, EMT, or paramedic RN.
Yeah,
Just because the public obviously is listening and doesn't know what that says.
those are all of your, I want to call them ranks. And we recommend that your paramedic RNs are paid $25 an hour for service to the city. Your EMTs are at $22 an hour, and your drivers are $19 an hour. And there's also some bullet points just ahead of that that we think that you can alleviate some of the stress on these guys not having a lot of people on the ranks by maybe giving us a little incentive to city employees that want to be an ambulance driver during the daytime hours or even the off-time hours, you know? So if you pay them, I don't want to say it alleviates the stress, but it sure does help. You know, it sure does help the bottom line, you know, especially if people are leaving their jobs and not being compensated by their employer.
One of the things that I attend all the economic development board meetings for our Cascade Economic Development Group. And we talked about just like we have challenges with daycare and how it's bigger than the daycare center's problem. It's a employment issue problem because if people don't show up for work, because they don't have any place to take their kids, as the council knows, we did a grant for that. But I think one of the efforts that we also have to make is try and help our community's employers understand. Like, and we really would have to get a list of like who's getting paid when they leave and who isn't. And to try to help them understand that even if they have gone into, and this would be for, you know, EMS and fire, but if you've gone down the path of no longer paying your employees when they're gone, that there is a long-term implication for you if we don't have timely services. Obviously, we don't have to have an ambulance service by law. We do have to have fire, and we never want either one of them to go. But to try and help our employers understand that them investing and still paying those people, and then obviously it's even better if we're also paying them. But I think that we have to take it to that greater level, just like we talked about with daycare, where we have to talk to people and say, look, like, it does stink that you have an unproductive worker right now for the 2 hours or 3 hours that they're gone. But for your contribution to making sure this community stays strong in ambulance, that we don't put it on the ambulance service personnel to have those conversations with their own bosses, but that we take it to a level of a policy choice as a community to say that we have to be able to incentivize people to be able to come during the day, and that they're not taking a personal financial hit by not being paid at work, because that's why people aren't going to come. And so I think us having that conversation at a higher level and appealing to the Economic Development Board and talking to the CEOs of our companies to say, this really is your contribution to assuring that we have EMS in the future.
Most definitely.
So we talked about that as well.
One of the other issues that we addressed, and we heard it from several, well, all of the volunteers, and we even heard it from a couple of people in the public, at Grace's Cafe, in fact, is, we heard a lot from Grace's Cafe, which has great food, by the way, is you guys getting rid of your BLS no transport fee. It's just not a good practice. It's politically it's taboo. It's not common. This was the first department that I've ever heard of ever doing it, and we think you guys should get rid of that BLS no transport fee. You know, if they use some incidental disposable medical equipment, it's just one of those costs of doing business. If they use a couple 4x4s and a Band-Aid, well, you're just not going to recoup the cost for those minor pieces of equipment. Do you want us to go through the bullet points at all of what?
Which page are you talking about? Which ones?
Us, you know, sent the recruitment, recruitment is
Oh,
tough
yeah.
everywhere. But, if you sent out some cards in the monthly water statements, it might show some interest in the people that don't know you have a volunteer ambulance service. There's probably some newcomers in town that don't know about a volunteer ambulance service or a volunteer fire department. So even a combined recruitment card of, hey, your community needs you to be a volunteer fireman and volunteer EMS provider. Your continuing education hours, all of our continuing education hours, whether you're at a paramedic level or an EMT level, are required by the state. We believe they should be compensated as regular hours of work to the city. It's service to the employer, it's service to the customer, which is the taxpayer, and we believe they should be paid for that at their regular, whatever their rank rate is.
Well, and they're required to maintain it. So.
One of the other things is an EMT class is an expensive class for some people. It's upwards to,
It's pushing $2,000 per person.
and some people don't have $2,000, that may want to volunteer. If the city would vet people interested and vet them thoroughly, maybe by having them be an ambulance driver, the ambulance crew gets to know them, and the city fronts the money, yeah, you're gonna have a couple people that can't pass the test. You're gonna have a couple people that get the EMT and move away. But we think the city should front that money for that license year. We know there's a lot of people that don't have $2,000 in the bank that would make great EMTs. And so that's an investment we think the city should consider. Providing an incentive to current city employees who want to be drivers. It's a touchy subject because they work 40 hours for the street department, then they are a paid driver for the city. Is it overtime? Is it not overtime? It's a touchy subject. You'd have to have legal counsel give you, whether you're not violating a fair wage and labor standard on that. But I think there'd be a couple people in the city that, especially during the day, would be able to leave the city street department or sewer department to be an ambulance driver. And it might show enough interest, they might get enough interest that they could eventually go to EMT school. Conflict resolution between the volunteers. Every department we've ever worked with, there's conflict resolution issues. We just think that conflict resolution needs to be open and talked about in the station amongst the crew. EMS and fire, I know our study was EMS, but EMS and fire is full of type A personalities. And we think that conflict resolution needs to be addressed amongst your volunteers in the station, amongst themselves. It shouldn't spill out into the public. And then looking at starting a high school explorer program. There's a couple of volunteers that said they were maybe thinking about it or have talked to a superintendent about it. We think that needs to be addressed, and there should be some money from the city. And it's not, the Explorer program for EMS or fire is not an expensive program to start. But if you get them young, you might be able to keep them. That's about all of our recommendations and our solutions. We just recommend the solution to them.
All right. So does anybody have questions?
I do.
Riley does.
I got two questions. So are most smaller communities going towards paying their volunteers?
Yes,
Okay,
per call, per hour of on call.
perfect. That's my first question. And then have you seen like anything else that other small communities are doing that has helped with their recruiting volunteers? And
Every community is different. You have your nucleus of, I don't want to call it the clique, but you have your nucleus of civic-minded individuals. And if they're engaged in it, then you have a lot better chance to get some volunteers out of that. And I'm referring to, the men's club, the volunteer fire department, since you guys aren't combined here. Those groups, the Kiwanis, those civic groups are the civic-minded individuals in this community that care about the community. And so if you engage with them on every level you can and at all times, you really only need 3 or 4 more volunteers. And I think you guys would be 3 or 4 dedicated volunteers. Then I think you guys would be sitting pretty comfortable. If you got 10, it'd be great, but you just need to engage the civic-minded people in your community. And we don't know who those people are because we're not from here. But you guys sure do. Does that answer your question?
it does.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so we're going to ask everybody to leave except for these two. There's chairs, like we said, over there. We'll turn off, Fred, on your way out, can you turn off the mics, please?
Do we do a motion to adjourn?